You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Lips and Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Lips and Ads. Go to lipsandads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your own online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage? Shopify's there to help you grow. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to the other leading commerce platforms. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. Shopify.com/promo.
Nicole, I'm not quite sure how to say this.
What's the matter?
Well, there's something I want to say, but I just don't know how to tell you.
Well, you know what? Don't worry, because this week we're practicing just that. How to have a difficult conversation. I'm Nicole Goodman.
And I'm Laura Mishkon, and this is Self-Care Club.
The advice for self-care today is endless and can be yet another overwhelming job for women.
Every episode, we trial a different self-care practice, live it to the letter for a week, and report back to you on the results.
Will it actually improve your well-being, or will it be another waste of your time? We test out self-care so you don't have to.
Welcome to Self-Care Club.
Sometimes we are faced with a challenging situation where we are in a position where a difficult conversation needs to be had. You may need to end a romantic relationship, a friend may have upset you, or a family member's values may be really different from yours. In a post-pandemic world where we have had to navigate our way through relationships and boundaries with our feelings around vaccines, mask wearing, how to behave when social distancing was in place, there have been a lot of complicated and difficult conversations that have been impossible to avoid.
Oh, so many.
So many.
As much as we might not like it, there are times when a difficult conversation is unavoidable, even if it makes us anxious, stressed, and wanting to run in the other direction, or all of the above.
It makes everyone want to run in the opposite direction, does it not?
Really, seriously, it does. Most people do not enjoy confrontation. They find it daunting and frightening and would rather avoid it and live with the upset that they're carrying around. Conflict avoiders are often worried about their likability. And while it's natural to want to be liked, it's not always the most important thing. The truth is that avoiding it usually doesn't help. If you tackle the conversation in the right way, it can help the other person better understand your feelings and beliefs and might even improve the situation or the relationship. Each difficult conversation is an opportunity to learn. And as soon as you start a conversation that gets you talking to another person, you're learning about yourself, about them, and you're growing as a person.
Can we just say that again? Each difficult conversation is an opportunity to learn. Well, because that means you go in with a very different perspective.
Yeah.
Without that ick factor hanging over your head.
Even if the anxiety's still there, there is kind of a purpose, a positive purpose.
A positive purpose. I'm going to grow from this. Yeah. So this week at Self-Care Club, we are going to talk about exactly how to have a difficult conversation. Karomo Brown from Queer Eye gives the advice that before you even start a dialogue, make sure that you can answer these 4 questions for yourself. Can I be responsive instead of reactive? How do I hope this conversation will help me grow? How do I hope this conversation will help the other person grow? What do I hope will be the end result of this conversation? So, let's get into how to do this, shall we?
Yeah.
Before you even have the conversation, there are some things that need to be put in place. Actually, that's a little bit of a relief.
Yes. So let's put them in place.
Come on
Number
in.
1, put on your big girl pants or your big boy pants.
I don't have big girl pants.
Or your non-gender conforming pants.
Thongs.
Big, they got to be big pants.
They can be.
They got to.
Listen, they can be thongs, and you
They're
can just
metaphorically big pants. Okay. Few people enjoy confrontation. Think of this as a way to find resolution and peace rather than starting something negative. Find the right time and the right place Don't confront someone in a public space. If you're being overheard by others, it's going to affect how you're both going to be able to talk, and you risk airing your private business to strangers. Find a quiet and neutral space where you both feel comfortable speaking openly. Be direct and give warning.
Yeah.
Don't ambush anyone into a conversation without pre-warning. It's unfair. Give them time and notice that you'd like to talk to them about something, and, if applicable, give them an outline of what the issue is without going into it. So, here we are at our agreed time in our safe, neutral space. How are we going to go about the conversation?
Well, first things first, think about what impact you want the conversation to have. I love that piece.
Yeah.
And that's something I always ask my coaching clients when we coach, because we often coach about how to have a difficult conversation. This is something that comes up for everybody. Let's say it's in the workplace, they have to go and talk to their boss. The first question I always ask is, what is the impact you want to have?
Nice.
Anticipate the resolution before you begin and expect a positive outcome. Anticipate the resolution. I love it. You're not just going in combative. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Have a goal in mind and be positive about the outcome. If you envisage the conversation ending up causing even more stress and upset, telling yourself this is going to be a disaster, you are unlikely to be respectful to the other person or allow yourself to be vulnerable. Genuine respect and vulnerability typically produce more of the same: mutual respect and shared vulnerability. So even when the subject matter is difficult, conversations can remain mutually supportive. Respect the other person's point of view and expect them to respect yours. Nice. Also, be clear about how you feel and what you want. A big part of tackling difficult conversations is communicating clearly and directly. It's perfectly fine and actually a good idea to plan what you want to say beforehand so that your nerves or emotions don't get the better of you. You can also come prepared with some notes or some bullet points.
Yes.
That's a good one.
I actually did that in my difficult conversation.
God, really?
Yes.
Okay. So start by explaining how you feel and what you think and why. Keep it as your own experience rather than throwing blame. Try not to use statements that begin with you, as this can make the other person feel attacked. Instead, use I statements. So instead of saying, you don't care about my feelings, try, I feel really upset when.
I mean, that is a tool to use in any argument, any conversation, anytime, anywhere. Always go with the I rather than the you, because the you is immediately an
Blame.
accusation.
Yeah.
Like the second you say it and the other person is put on the back foot and becomes defensive, or can become defensive.
Immediately defensive. Or they have to work through not being defensive.
Yeah.
So the conversation's already difficult.
Yes.
Right? And you're not getting that impact that you originally go in with.
No.
Describe exactly what outcome you want. Do you want an apology, an acknowledgement, or for them to behave differently in the future? Tell them. This will help them see things from your point of view and give them a clear way forward.
Yeah.
That's
People aren't
nice.
psychic, so they might not really know what it is you want from that conversation.
Or what you need. But the thing is, maybe you don't. So I would say, know what you want and need, as we said, before you go in. Understand what you want the outcome and the resolution to look like.
Yeah.
And if it's just to have a go,
Then don't.
I wouldn't bother.
That's not a conversation. That's an attack.
Yeah.
Come with sincere curiosity. Ask why this issue is happening instead of accusing someone of something. The point of this conversation is to learn why the other person is behaving in a way that's having a negative impact on you and your relationship. Listen. Don't think about clever comebacks. You may have spent days, weeks, or even months going over all the sarcastic, witty, sharp comebacks that you wish you'd said at the time of the incident. And as satisfying as they may seem to you in the mirror or saying them out loud to yourself in the car, this is not the place for them. If you're instigating a challenging conversation, then your job is to listen fully and allow the other person to respond. Don't spend the time when the other person is talking thinking about what you want to say next. Really listen to what they're saying and try and understand their point of view. Ask them questions like, tell me more about that. How does that make you feel? Don't talk over them. You might learn something about them you didn't know or see the situation from a different angle. If they see that you're switched on and engaged, they're much more likely to do the same for you.
Yes.
Here's a classic. let go of being right.
We've done a whole show on that.
We have an entire week.
Yeah.
Being right can be the most seductive thing in the world, but rarely does it bring resolve, and it usually just adds more conflict. So if you can let go of that need that you are right and they are wrong, the conversation is going to be much more successful. And if you do need help on that,
go back and listen to the show. It was an absolute corker of a show.
It was.
So perhaps that might be your first port of call. Go listen to that show.
Then have your conversation.
Then come back here.
Perspective. Try and look at the situation from their perspective. Has this person done or said anything like this before? Is this totally out of character? Is there something else going on in their life that might be a factor? Did I do anything that might have hurt or confused or angered them that might account for what happened? People do and say things for many different reasons. Remember, it isn't always about you.
It rarely is.
Very rare. Sometimes it is, but not always.
Yeah. I think it's really important to discuss what's the worst thing that can happen in these conversations, and if it isn't going well.
Yes, that's very important, because we can't all live in the dream world where you say your piece, they say theirs, and then you're best friends.
No, and I think that happens with very few people. I mean, I've had so many conversations going in and they have gone absolutely in the wrong direction.
Tits up.
And I didn't have the tools to get myself out of it. So sometimes you can do everything that you can possibly try to have a constructive chat, but if the other person isn't willing to do the same, it will feel like it's going nowhere. So here are a few options if the other person is too upset, angry or emotional to respond. Take a break.
Yep.
Walk away and try again when you've both had time to calm down. Agree to come back later if there is more to say, but you have to both be there with the same intention.
Well, I'm just thinking about if I have a little ruckus at home with the husband, his way of dealing with it now, because we've been together so long, is that he will walk away because I know,
drive me nuts.
Which in the moment makes me raging. But he always says, nothing constructive is going to come from this when you're angry. So I have to give it space and time. And then I always know you'll be calmer and then we can have a constructive conversation. And the thing is, he's right. But in the moment, I hate it in the moment.
Oh my God, I would feel so slighted.
Yeah, but then we do manage to have a constructive conversation, and that's why we're still married 21 years later.
But that's... the husband and wife thing is kind of...
It's an anomaly in every category we've ever tested, right?
Yes,
yeah.
It sits in its own little
own
world.
Universe.
It does.
It does.
Because it doesn't come into all of this, because obviously you both love each other and you
want a resolution.
If you're in a healthy, happy marriage, you both want a resolution,
Of
and you will both have to get there in order to be able to live together.
Yeah.
So kind of,
But the taking a break piece, as much as it can be frustrating, I do actually think it's a good idea. Just take a breath, take a minute.
Of course it is, especially if you're going around in circles and it's starting to get, well, you did this, no, you did that, no, I didn't. There's no point. He's right. No resolution can live from there. So you could ask someone who is objective and not involved in the situation, but who has a vested interest in the well-being of both people, to join you, to mediate, help reduce the tension, oh my God, and encourage both sides to try and reach a resolution. I mean... that would be quite an interesting job, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I have offered my mediation services quite a few times.
Have you?
Yeah.
Have you been taken up on them?
No. No. In fact, there's
Are
one...
you gefritzled about that?
No, not at all. But they haven't found a place where they can be together again.
Okay.
And I think that's a real shame. And I've offered to sit in the room with both of them and just see.
Maybe it's not time yet.
And the thing is, I've got more of a vested interest in one than the other.
Then you're maybe not the right person.
I'm not completely neutral, but I do want them to both find resolutions so they can, get back together. So you could do that. So you could ask someone to be in the room with you. You could agree to disagree. Oh, there's a thought. We should do a week on that. Agreeing to disagree. Not all conversations like this are going to have a happy ending, and that is okay. Agreeing to disagree doesn't mean you are backing down. What you are doing is protecting yourself by choosing which battles to fight. Knowing when to let go is very powerful.
Very.
And you don't have to agree. You just have to respect
the
one
other
another.
person's point of view.
Yeah, because you might not agree. I mean, more often than not, you won't. And I say it to Adam all the time. I don't agree. He always says to me, "You're not listening to me." I said, "No, I'm not agreeing with you. There's a difference."
There is a big difference.
There's a big difference. But he finds that he struggles to see the difference in that. Because he thinks that I need to agree in order for us to move forward.
Okay.
But, you know,
Okay.
it's very male.
It is quite male,
It is male.
Now, the other thing that's very important here, and really, you know, the crux of the podcast, look after yourself.
Oh, that's a cute one.
Difficult conversations can get a bit heated.
Yeah.
Emotions, hurt, anger can come out afterwards. You might feel very drained, or you might feel very relieved, or you might feel very upset. And taking care of yourself afterwards is a real priority. So try and switch off and relax. Go for a walk, get outside, listen to a podcast, listen to some music, meditate, or just talk to someone who makes you feel good. You should also be very proud of yourself for starting this conversation. It takes real courage to do this.
That's nice.
Yep.
But what if the situation is reversed,
Ooh.
Lauren?
Ooh.
What if you find yourself on the receiving end of somebody trying to initiate a difficult conversation with you?
Oh, I've been there.
I did have this fear this week that I was going to get a phone call from you saying, like, we really need to have a chat about something. I thought I was going to be like your guinea pig.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, I would be scared if I was sitting around thinking that about you.
Yeah. I mean, scared's a bit strong, but I just
no,
thought
I would be scared.
I didn't think there was an issue, so I didn't think there was anything we needed to
Do
discuss.
you think
but
I would
thought-
just fabricate one for
I
the
thought,
podcast?
What if I'm her person that she needs? You know, we spend a lot of time together.
Then I think we would have had a very respectful conversation.
Totally.
I feel like it, whatever it was, my imaginary slight with you, I feel like it would have been okay in the end. Or even if we couldn't agree, I feel like you would respectfully listen.
Oh, thank you. I would have. Of course I would
I know
have.
you
Well,
would.
Of course I would, because I love you.
Oh,
And I would want us to be okay.
She loves me today.
Don't tell anyone.
I won't tell anyone the secret, not even James.
So if you find yourself in the situation where someone wants to have a difficult conversation with you, the same rules apply, clubbers.
Yeah.
If you are ambushed and not expecting the conversation and you don't feel comfortable or ready to engage in it, then be direct and honest and just say that. Don't deflect. It's perfectly okay to say that now's not the right time, but you are happy to arrange another time to talk. I think that's very productive and helpful, actually, because you can say, you know what? I've had a really bad morning and I haven't got my listening ears on. So please, can we just do this at a time when we can actually hear one another? I think that's great. If the other person cannot be respectful of that or is aggressive or coming at you with sarcasm or comebacks, then politely let them know that their lack of respect is not okay with you. It's called boundaries.
Oh, yeah, them.
Yeah, go listen to that show too. There's a lot of shows on this. And tell them that you are going to just simply walk away. And when you finally do have the conversation, allow the other person to say their piece and listen carefully before responding. Now, that is a great piece of advice.
Yes.
Simon Sinek, never know how to pronounce it. Simon Sinek, I
Not
think.
sure.
Anyway, he always says that whenever he goes into a meeting, he lets everybody else in the room speak. Mm-hmm. Then he knows what is in the room and he knows how to respond effectively. He's talking from a leadership
What is
point of
his
view.
job?
He's like a coach, mentor, sort of motivational speaker.
That's interesting. That is
He
interesting.
talks about business leadership a lot.
Okay.
So he says, always find out what's in the room.
Read the room.
Yeah. And let people tell you, and then you can respond to whatever is in the space. But if you don't know what's in the room and you just go in and you start talking first, then you're kind of at sea without a paddle.
Yes.
Anyway, to assist us with this week, because we could not do this on our own.
No, it was
could
tricky.
we? So we've got a guest that we are very excited about. We brought in the one and only Clemmy Telford, expert in difficult conversations. And this is what she had to say.
We are delighted to invite Clemmy Telford on the show. Clemmy is the podcast host of But Why and Honestly, and the author of the book by the same name, But Why. She's a content creator and curator of the Mother of All Lists blog. Clemmy uses her platforms to help her community explore all sorts of tricky but important subjects via honest conversations. Everything from birth to death, mental well-being to body image, money and relationships, and everything in between. So,
Welcome, Clemmy.
Thank you, ladies. Nice to be here.
so nice to have you.
Delighted to have you.
We needed a bit of an expert on this week.
Oh, this is not an easy week. We do a lot of mental practice on the show, but this is one I've been dreading.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, because it's uncomfortable.
The first thing I wanted to ask you is, why is it important to have difficult conversations?
I'm that big size because I also find this, it is difficult. Conversations are difficult. I think when people become an adept at them, you think that it comes easy. It really doesn't. You know what? This actually also my answer is back to front, as well as having, in amongst having all these difficult conversations, I've covered some really tricky subjects. I've covered death, I've covered estrangement, I've covered divorce. And in the middle of all of those places are regrets about relationships and how they've fallen apart. And really, the only thing that could save those relationships is communication and difficult conversations. And so, although you might have, and you know, that's the extreme end of it, but that is what happens when things fall apart. And so, what I increasingly try and remind myself is that it's better to have 20 minutes of tricky conversation than to potentially allow things to fester and become the things that end up really, hemorrhaging ruining relationships and become things we hugely regret.
The thing is that you have to have someone else able to have that difficult conversation with you, don't you? You have to have someone sitting in the midst with you, being vulnerable with you. What happens if that person is just not willing to hear you or see you or receive it in the way that it's coming across? What do you do with that?
Well, I think we have to, accept that different people are on this kind of journey of wanting to get to that vulnerability. But a real shift for me has been learning that in any difficult conversation, my main objective should be to be the best listener I can be. If you go into any conversation thinking that the outcome needs to be whatever is in your mind, you're flawed. You know, what you actually need to go into any conversation is to try and better understand what the other person is thinking. So that really changes the parameters. And then there are some habits that I try and instill that help other people feel more comfortable. So you're having a challenging conversation and in your heart, you're thinking it's often that person. But if you go into it and say, you make me feel this, you did that, you're pushing someone into a corner. Whereas if you go, when this happened, I felt, and this was how it was for me, you're taking ownership of your feelings and your experience of a situation and not making them have to take responsibility. Because, you know, what I have learned from trying to have these difficult conversations is so often is miscommunication. And actually you've escalated something into something that no longer represents what is truly going on. And so, that's my kind of best advice to help someone who doesn't know. And also to know that this takes flex. There's in therapy, I think they talk a lot about, it's not about the rupture, it's about the repair. And actually I'm into powerlifting, and actually how you get stronger is you're constantly breaking the muscles and enabling them to grow, fix the breakage, and that's how you get stronger. And the same happens with relationships. So you have to kind of go through that bit where it feels, you know, it triggers all of our worst bits and it feels like your relationship is over or you know, it has been challenged. But if you can then give each other time, if you repeatedly do that, you learn that feeling, that vulnerability isn't a crisis, it's just part of the path.
Nice. Why do you think that people are so reluctant to go into this? What are the sort of main concerns or worries or anxieties that most people have about entering into a conversation like that or a situation like that?
I think we become fearful of conflict, and that conflict is bad, and it really isn't. Conflict that when you're trying to again victimize someone or make someone solely be responsible can feel bad. But we're really not good at uncomfortable feelings. And again, through all the work that I've done, I'm really trying to understand that no feeling is better or worse than the other. It just gives us information. So feeling dismissed, feeling angry, feeling embarrassed, they're really useful, because again, one of my real trigger points is any situation where I feel dismissed, which again, a therapist would go wild on what that means about my childhood. But I now have to know that I'm really sensitive to that. And check in with whether something is being triggered that isn't in line with the actual reality. and yeah, and accept that we have to get to those bits. And again, for me, if I'm truly invested in a conversation, it often leads me to tears, and I'm trying not to be scared of that. It's actually okay to cry.
Yes.
It's okay, and you're showing someone a very, very raw version of you. But if they're a person who's of value to you, then that's okay.
Yeah. I love that. And I like what you said about conflict. It's like getting comfortable with conflict and not always seeing it as a scary, terrible thing. How often do people go, oh no, I'm conflict averse, or I don't like confrontation, and then so they say
That's me.
They You are very direct. You always say that.
I am also exceptionally conflict averse.
Are you?
Oh yeah, horrendously. This whole week has like just been painful in my chest.
It is painful, but what Clem is pointing to is that to get comfortable with that conflict and see it as it's something that's, you're saying it can be useful and beneficial rather than something bad that we should avoid, right?
Yeah, and so as I try and lean into this more and more, friends that I have really gone there with, where they really have shone some uncomfortable truths at me and me back at them, and picked apart things rather than going, well, that's how it is. Neither of us are very happy. Really picked apart. Those friendships become much stronger because it's a real investment in one another to sit with that, to say, I love you enough to sort this out, or I value enough if it's in a workplace. Yeah.
But you have does that other person, I guess this is my question, does that other person have to be open to it as well? Is there a way of having, because so often you can have a difficult conversation and the other person is not in the same place as you, or wants to blame, or wants to just make you wrong for everything, but you're sitting there doing all the tools that you're pointing to and talking from your own experience and sort of taking accountability and listening and all of these wonderful life skills. But if the other person isn't offering it back,
is that enough? That's the part B of it, right? It's like, if you just get it off your chest and just say it, but they're not responsive to it, is it enough to just have voiced it?
I think there's two parts. I think there's definite value in that. And so many of us, our absolute craving is just to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that has that. But I think without getting too deep, you come back to what your values are and the people that you surround yourself with. I am very preoccupied with honesty and integrity and accountability. And as I go through my life, I think my friendship group reduces. The people that I really, really genuinely care reduces.
Yeah.
And not everyone wants to sit in this place, and that's fine. And what I kind of do is like, well, then that's fine. You remain in a kind of surface level friendship, which is absolutely fine.
Yes.
The people that have true access to my heart are the people that will go through this. And increasingly that's how I see. And then as a parent, I think I really am trying to teach these skills to my children, which is easier said than done. And, if anyone is to trigger the worst version of yourself in conflict, it is a small child, where I'm just like, I am being so utterly irrational and I've lost it absolutely. But I try and get them to know that we can have conflict, but it isn't a rupture that is anything to be scared of.
And I like what you're pointing to, that if you are in that space with someone and you are both having that difficult conversation, it leads to such a richness and such an intimacy that actually it can be such a bonding experience if you're both there together. It's lovely. Because I think a lot of the time you think about a difficult conversation, which is how we've gone into the week, haven't we? With, this is difficult, this is hard, I don't want to do this, there's resistance. But actually what Clem is saying is the benefits that you get after you've been brave enough to have that difficult conversation with someone are so huge and so enormous that actually it's worth it. It's worth the discomfort.
I think it's magic. I think it's like, historically debating and like challenging ideas is what makes us human. I think it's fantastic. I think as long as we, as I said at the beginning, you can't go and change anybody. You can let them know how the experience was for you, but they're not going to think like you. You're not going to, I mean, is that a success if you get someone to go, actually, you're right, I was wrong. This is that isn't a good way to leave anything. I think another important point is, it's a bit of one of those things you see on Instagram, but it's leave something 24 hours and then say something within 48. I think a cooling off period is
I'm into that.
It's really important because
why are you laughing? Because you think I'm a procrastinator. That's why you're laughing, right?
Maybe.
She's laughing because I think she's impulsive and she thinks I'm a procrastinator.
I can't tell you how much it fucks me off every time she calls me impulsive. I mean,
why?
Because I think you think that's a bad thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that it's a seesaw.
Should we have a difficult conversation?
Are you an Aries? What star sign are you?
I'm an Aquarius, and I have never been called impulsive in my entire life until Lauren Mishgorn walked into my life. Yeah.
But you see, I've never been called a procrastinator.
Yeah, so it's relative, isn't it?
Yeah, it's relative.
To where you are on the scale.
Of course. But as Nicole and I head into this week, would you be able to give us 3 tips for both of us about how to have a difficult conversation, or, just 3 tips to kind of guide us through our week?
Yes. I think it's really important. So that a cooling off period is important, and also a bit of a check in with yourself. And I'm not even joking. Are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you hormonal? Are you dehydrated?
Yes.
Yeah. All of the above. Yeah.
All of the above. And, I fully believe that actually some of the stuff that comes to the surface when you've got PMT is actually, what does my friend call it? Permanent mega truth. I think there's some truth in it.
Yeah, there are people who say that basically it's not just created through the PMT. It's stuff that you've been burying for the rest of the month, and at that point in the month, it just comes to the surface, and you can't suck it up anymore.
Yes, yeah. I've always said that. I love permanent mega truth. Tell her I'm stealing it. It's true. I think it's when we are at our most powerful and we feel everything in all its heightened glory.
But sometimes it's not great to feel that way.
Okay, so the first step is to check in with yourself.
Yeah, because, if you want to have a very, very good, difficult conversation, you're trying to come at it as diffused as possible, and as rational as possible. Because, as I said, I'm emotional. I will always end up in an emotional state, but it's trying to take all the rational, make it as rational as possible.
Can I fix this with a sandwich first?
Yeah, because my granny always used to say sleep on it, and there's so much truth in that. That is that 24, leave it 24 hours and just let it percolate in your head, and try and check in with why you're feeling what you're feeling, how much of it is close to fact. Number 2, take ownership of it rather than the blame. So that bit of language about I felt this rather than you made me feel this, or my experience of this was this. You've got to take ownership for it. And when the other person speaks, there's such power in saying, I'm hearing what you're saying, and then go into whatever you're saying, because that, as I mentioned before, that is the kind of thing that we all crave, whether you agree or not. It's to feel heard.
Yes.
And also just to know that difficult conversations take practice. There's something we're so out of tune with, but I mean, I really think actually conversations generally are something we're a little bit out of tune with, which is really sad. We are so distracted by technology, by all that we can do. If we're with someone having a coffee, you've still got your notifications going off. You've still got emails going off. So we're not even that comfortable with just having one-on-one chats anymore, let alone difficult ones. But it is something that is worth practicing, but can have huge impacts on your life, because not having the difficult conversations, you just got to remember what the other thing is. Do you harbor resentment? Do you chalk something up against that person for something they've done? Do you feel misunderstood? Those are far more damaging things to have in the long term than the 20-minute sticky conversation.
Totally. I totally agree.
And there's that thing that if it feels like a hard conversation, it's probably a conversation worth having.
Yeah. Oh, God.
That's a good one to remember.
Oh, God. And also, when you use that term, lean in, like lean into the discomfort, don't run away from it, because it's an edge and it's something that needs looking at and exploring.
Yeah. And it's, and you can call it out as well. I'm finding this uncomfortable. I'm nervous about it. This isn't easy for me. It's like humanize it, but it's human connection, isn't it? I really do think it is a gift, but it's hard.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you so much, Clemmy.
Thank you, Clemmy. And you'll come back on Friday and give our listeners their challenge of the week?
Yes,
Oh,
with pleasure.
That's going to be
Perfect.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. It has been a total pleasure. We've wanted to have you on this show for a very long time.
So long.
Well, yeah, I'm now like feeling like I need to go and pick up a few conversations.
You've inspired yourself.
Well, let us know how they go.
Yeah,
Oh,
let us know.
already feeling dread.
Thank you. We'll
My
speak
pleasure.
to you
My
Friday.
absolute pleasure.
You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Lips and Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Lips and Ads. Go to lipsandads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com.
How do you feel about difficult conversations? I know already you're better than me. I know you're not. It's not like your favourite thing, but I know you're kind of more willing to go there than I am.
Oh, I'm not really.
More than me.
Well, that's not hard. That's not hard.
No.
But I wouldn't say I was. It's not something I enjoy, and it's not something that I would want to have to do.
Yeah.
And it depends who it is.
Okay.
So if it's my husband, or if it's you, or if it's my friend Donna, or if it's the people closest to me, or my sister, then I would absolutely go there.
But
Because
how many truly difficult conversations do you have to have with any of those people?
I don't.
Not really. I mean, they might be like niggly things, but they're not truly kind of life-changingly hard.
No, because we're so close and so connected that it doesn't really get to that point.
Exactly.
So those are the people that I would be okay with having a difficult conversation with.
Yeah.
I think anything outside of that, it gets really mucky.
How does it make you feel?
Scared, terrified, actually, anxious,
Yeah.
upset.
Yeah.
I get very consumed by it.
Yeah.
I can't kind of move on from it.
Yeah.
And when I know that it's something I have to do, it's like
It makes me spin. It makes me spin in my head. And I go over and over and over it. And I do exactly that thing of like all the little pithy comebacks and all the little snipey comments that I could say and all the little nasty, sarcastic snipes. I go through like hours of them in my head.
You wouldn't do that.
No, I wouldn't do it out loud, but I do it in my head, and it's very all-consuming, and it's very, I feel it in my body, like deeply uncomfortable. It makes me feel fidgety and
It's a very unpleasant energy,
horrible, horrible feeling. Do you think that you've got better or worse or more adverse to having them as you've gotten older?
isn't it? I don't think I've got better at it.
No, I definitely haven't.
You know, and you'll see in my week that it didn't go well.
Right.
So
I'm less combative than I used to be.
oh,
I've mellowed
yes.
a lot. I've mellowed a lot.
well, also the work that we do here and the work that I've done with my coaching and my clients and everything else, I've learned that the being right thing and not being able to let go of that is so toxic. And so I can let go of that a bit more and I can understand that it's about impact and it's about resolution and it's about finding a solution together and it's about relationships and connection. And so there's all of that perspective, that juicy perspective that's in there that never used to be. But that's learning and getting older, isn't it?
I think so. I think that's what's helped me is just being older.
And also the people in my life that would cause me such difficulty, they're just not in my life.
Correct. That's the other thing is they get filtered out.
They get filtered
don't they?
out. Because if it's something, if you keep needing to have these difficult conversations
Yeah.
with people, well, then you
Yeah.
know what?
Yeah.
That's not a healthy relationship to be in.
So how did you feel tackling this week?
I just. It's been hanging over our head.
Yeah, a long time.
Since
The summer. For
July.
the whole summer, basically.
So we knew
Yeah.
we were coming back
Yeah.
with this show in September. So we've been dealing with it since July,
Yeah.
haven't we?
Yeah.
Thinking about it. And every time we talk about the show, we're like, you know, finger in the ears, la, la,
Yeah.
la, la, la. I
Yeah.
don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Yep. I've been the same.
Yeah.
But what I realised was, and, obviously I'll tell you more in my week, is that because we always come here with the truth, I couldn't fabricate a difficult conversation or kind of initiate a difficult conversation for the sake of the podcast, because I didn't feel that it would be sincere. Like I could drum one up, but I didn't feel I'd be coming to it with the real feelings of how it felt to have one.
I agree with that, by the way.
There was one that I did want to have. Sorry, we're just going into my week now, it seems.
Well, that is the nature of the show.
Okay.
You do understand that that's the format.
Okay.
We talk about how we felt about it.
Thank you for telling me that.
And then we go into how our weeks.
Then will we summarise at the end?
We might.
Okay.
We might. It depends.
There was a conversation that I wanted to have, but I realised the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I'm not really having this conversation because I want a resolution, because there's nothing I can do to change the situation. All I'm going to be doing is kind of venting my stuff, upsetting the other person, and it's not actually going to help or achieve anything. And I tried to think about ways of going around it where it would be less combative, but I just thought the timing is wrong. It's wrong. I'm not achieving anything other than potentially upsetting someone I really don't want to upset.
And it's great that you've brought that here, because that's not what we're doing.
No.
We're not. This is not a week of going to have a go at people that have upset you.
No.
That is not what this is about.
And also, they hadn't upset me. The situation had upset me. And I was really kind of aware of not wanting to put my stuff onto someone where actually it was my stuff. It's just they were the person I wanted to express it to. So I just decided not to. And I've kind of...
And where does it sit now with you?
At some point, there will be some sort of conversation, but it won't be in the same way that I was considering having it.
It won't have the same energy because it would have moved forward.
And I'm not kind of sitting in the funk of it. I just feel like at some point, if it's appropriate, I would have the conversation, but I'm not sure it would necessarily be difficult. It would be uncomfortable.
Isn't that difficult though? Isn't discomfort difficult as well at the same time?
Yeah.
But also that has come with age. For me anyway, the being able to have the patience to say, not now, but it will come and the time will present itself and that's all okay.
I think timing's
Everything.
quite important with these
Everything.
things. So what I thought I would talk about was definitely, in my 44 and a half years, the most difficult conversation I have ever had to have. And I hope I don't have to have one as difficult again.
Jeez.
It was really difficult. So I will start with the beginning bit, which was, it was within our family and it was connected with work and jobs. So it wasn't personal or anything terrible, but it was a big deal. And we were summoned to a restaurant, Ollie and I, my husband and I, and completely ambushed. As in, we had no idea when we got there that the other couple wanted to have this conversation with us. It came completely out of the blue.
So you're speaking about a difficult conversation from the other side.
Well, I'm telling you both the whole thing.
Okay.
So it began like that.
Yeah.
We had a feeling something was off. Something was amiss. They were being quite odd. We didn't really know why. We had no clue. We met and they ambushed us with this.
They didn't go through the steps.
They certainly didn't go through the steps with what was a major accusation.
Jeez.
I mean, so extraordinary. In the beginning, I thought it was a joke.
Aimed at both of you?
No, not aimed at both of us. Aimed at one of us. And the other was I'm the innocent bystander in this. But effectively aimed at both of us.
Right.
And it was so shocking. And because there was no time to process.
Yeah, you were processing it with them.
And we're in a public space and we're ambushed. It was like, what? Like someone had chucked a bomb onto the table. So obviously there was no resolution. It was just actually the most deeply uncomfortable, awful, awful evening. No one could even eat because it was so stressful. And we left.
Jeez. God, I'm so sorry.
Fast forward 3 years, the situation is still going on.
Wow.
And not only is it going on, but it's becoming more and more and more toxic.
Wow.
And we then find out that lots of other people were aware of this situation for quite a few years
Before you guys
before
were.
we were made
God. Okay.
aware of it, which was a horrendous thought, because there's an accusation flying around which other people know about, which is entirely untrue, that's been going on for ages, and there's been no opportunity to defend it or
Resolve it.
nothing.
Okay.
Anyway, it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And then it was coming up to my eldest son's bar mitzvah. So this is a few years ago now, because he's 18. This was 5 years ago. And it started to get worse. And there were emails going back and forth between us, all of us, that were, I would use the word poisonous.
Jeez.
To the point where a couple of days before the bar mitzvah, the thought of seeing them or being with them or having them there was so awkward, so difficult, so painful.
In what was meant to be one of the most incredible weekends of your life.
Yeah. And so what happened was, at the party, I actively avoided them at my own party, which is something that sat with me then, sits with me now.
Yeah.
The fact that this is this very, very special day that you've been building up to for a really long time. And my main concern of the evening
Was avoiding them.
to bypass a table so I don't have to make eye contact or speak to them. And that was awful, just awful.
Yeah.
Anyway, eventually, after that, we got to a point where we needed to have a conversation. And we all understood that it was impossible for us to be able to do this in a way that wasn't explosive, because
You needed mediation, basically.
my husband had tried, the other person had walked out after 3 minutes. There'd been various attempts to try and do this, and it just wasn't happening. So we actually got a mediator.
Okay.
And the mediator was a completely neutral person who knew all four people, but had no vested interest in either side.
Yep.
What she wanted desperately was resolution, because she very much cared about all four of us. And she agreed to mediate in a neutral space. And the thing that was so difficult for me in all of this was that the other three people had had loads and loads and loads of opportunity to voice it, speak it. They'd spoken to each other. They'd spoken to loads of other people. It had all been kind of like all their gripes and feelings and upset had been very open. And I had never spoken about it to them, obviously to my husband, but not to them. I'd never had that space, and it consumed me.
Oh.
I mean, almost daily. I thought about it endlessly. I talked about it endlessly. It affected like where we went, what we did, who we saw,
I totally.
like what family event. Like if there was a family event, we would go, or they would go.
Right. So
It
get
was
to
like
the
that.
get to the conversation. How did it go? Did you I mean, obviously you didn't have this step program in place then.
Well, the first thing I did was phone the mediator and said, "I'm sorry, I can't come."
Okay.
can't-
Excellent. That wasn't on the steps,
Yeah.
clubbers, just so you
I
know.
can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And she said, of all the four people involved in this, you are the one who has to do it. So you're going to come and I'm going to be there and it's going to be okay. So I made notes. I actually did that.
That's great.
And I thought, I don't want to be like completely blindsided or caught up in another bit of the conversation. I need my points there. So we went to the mediation. I was incredibly anxious and worried, and just it's my idea of hell.
I mean, it's an awful situation
Awful.
to be put in. I've
Awful.
never been put in a situation like that. I couldn't even begin to imagine the anxiety.
So the mediator said, I would like you to start.
I actually feel anxious as
I
you're
know, I
telling me
can't
this
even tell
story.
you. And she said, I would like you to start. And I thought, okay, at least then I've like vomited
Said,
it out and I've
yes,
done it.
yes.
And I said, look, I'm really embarrassed, but I've written notes. And they were like, that's totally fine, you know. So I said my points and I got everything out that I needed to.
Well done.
Thank you. And, you know, look, I did express my upset, my anger, my hurt, all the things I needed to express.
Which is not
And-
an easy thing for you to do.
No, and it wasn't, I was going to say it wasn't accusatory, but, you know, it kind of was, but not in an aggressive way. And then everyone else spoke. And then I was really interested in how we could find resolution. And I asked the other people, you know, are you going to be able to get over this and forgive and forget? And they said, no. You, yes, not your husband. And I thought, well,
we come as a
deal. Pack, so
Yeah.
that's not happening.
And the thing is that going back to what we said in the intro, if there is no space for both of you to find the resolution, if you're both not there for the same reasons, there's nowhere to go. You have to both want the same outcome.
Well, the thing was, it's not a situation where we could go, okay, listen, we're just not friends anymore and we just won't see each other anymore.
No, you
and
were
that's
family
that.
members.
You can't do that. It wasn't, and it was affecting everyone else. You know, you do feel these things are between you, but they're not. They have this effect.
Trickle down to everything.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like a fountain. I mean, everyone else is affected and caught up. And so that was another point of wanting to resolve things. And so I said, do you think that at some point you could reach a place of positive neutrality where you don't feel anything negative, you don't feel anything good, you're not activated by it anymore? They said, I don't know. But that conversation was so cathartic, so healing. It just changed everything for me.
Well, that's interesting because it was the fact that you got to speak up
Yes.
and you got to voice yourself
and be properly heard. And I have to say, they were incredibly respectful when I spoke. They really listened. Really, really listened and took it in and took accountability and apologised for those bits that really hurt me. And that meant a lot, you know, even in that situation.
But that's a very extreme scenario
It was,
as well, because
yeah.
it had gone on for many years.
Yes.
And you had to get a professional mediator in to mediate the room. So they had no choice, if you know what I mean. I mean, okay, they didn't need to turn up.
They did have a choice. They did have a choice in how they responded. I could have been cut off. I could have been ignored. I could have been told.
You could have been, but there was a mediator there and they would have called them out on it.
To be honest, she didn't actually do very much at
her
all. But she was
presence
just
was
there.
enough. Her presence was enough.
Her presence was enough to mean no one walked out or behaved badly.
Exactly.
Right?
That everyone kept it respectful.
But I think the being heard, the being listened to was massive for me.
But that's what this is, isn't it? That, I mean, you've summed that up so beautifully in your example that this is all this is that human beings need to be heard.
Yeah.
They need to be seen. They need to be acknowledged. And if they're upset about something, they don't need to be gaslit and told, well, actually, that's not what happened, or, well, I don't see it that way. Well, it's irrelevant how you see it. That's how I feel. And that is something I've gotten better at as I've gotten older. It's like if I have an argument, let's say with Adam, because he's such an easy example in terms of because we're so close. And he often says, but no, I didn't do that. I'm like, no, that's how I see it. That's how it feels to me. Whether or not you see it like that is separate. You don't get to tell me that I don't feel that way because that's not a truth. Well, I have got a couple of examples and I didn't really know which one to pick.
Okay.
So there's a couple of examples where I totally bombed.
Okay.
I mean, bombed.
Yep.
And then there's an example which is not really about being upset with somebody, but it was a difficult conversation.
Okay.
So I'll do that one first.
Okay.
So I have retired from my hairdressing.
You're just going to knit now at home.
I'm gonna and start playing bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, fuck off. No, I'm not playing bridge. I was joking. And the difficult conversation that I needed to have was to tell my clients.
Many of them.
Well, I thought there were two that I wanted to tell. Actually, there were three I wanted to tell face to face. Well, there were many I wanted to tell face to face, but I have too many clients.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait for them all to be coming in or meet up for coffee with all of them.
Yeah.
So it wasn't going to be possible. But there were a handful of people that needed to hear from me that I was retiring because they have been with me for 24 years.
Yeah.
25 years, some of them. I've been invited to their kids' weddings, their 60th, their 70th. I've been with them through second marriages, divorces, births.
Yeah.
You know, they've seen me meet Adam, get married.
And as we know, a hairdresser is like a priest, basically. You just confess everything in the chair. So you're like a big person in their lives.
I am a big person.
Yeah.
And they've become big people in my life because I see them on a weekly basis.
Yep.
So the feeling is very mutual.
Yeah.
And there was one woman who I told a couple of my clients, and then there was another lady called Linda who I've done forever, and she's wonderful and she's very special to me, and I wanted to tell her face to face, and she was on holiday,
Right.
so I had to wait a week.
Okay.
And then the plan was to tell her, I'd already told the other couple, and then send a group text out to everybody just letting them know, because
Right.
I wanted to tell them ASAP so they could sort themselves out for September, which is obviously now. And I was so nervous. And she came in and she'd been on holiday. She's obviously telling me about her holiday, and she didn't know what was coming.
She was being ambushed.
She was sort of being ambushed, but I wasn't giving I wasn't accusing her of anything. So she hadn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this counts, but
I think it counts because it's a difficult conversation.
and I really went through the motions,
Right.
and I felt quite anxious about it, and it was really weighing heavy on me because I knew I couldn't move forward with it until I'd told her. So she was kind of like that green light. And she told me a bit about holiday, and then I just sort of plucked up the courage and I said, and it's a little bit of an out of body experience, isn't it? Because you sort of float up away from yourself. And I said, look, I need to tell you something. And she said, okay, are you all right? I said, no, I'm fine, but this is what I've decided to do, and this is why. And she's so wonderful. And she said, bearing in mind she has seen me every single week for over 20 years.
Yeah.
She does not wash her own hair, Lauren. She doesn't have shampoo. She has
love
shampoo
it.
when she goes on holiday.
Oh my God.
So she is totally reliant on me for her hair.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I just think that's so great.
Oh.
She said, good for you. And I'm not surprised. And I know that it's something you want to do, and I'm really happy for you. And then she said, can we please make sure that we still see each other? And I said, oh my God.
And when I see you, can you do my hair?
No, she didn't. She was totally respectful,
That's
totally
so nice.
happy for me as her friend first. And it was really special.
That's so nice.
And I thought to myself, this is why I've adored you for all these years, because you are just such a wonderful lady.
And she didn't make it about her.
At all.
That's so nice.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not all my clients have done that.
No, I'm sure. But that's a good person. That's a good human being.
And I really hope that she'll be in my life forever.
Yeah.
I really think she will be.
Yeah.
So that was my difficult conversation that went really well.
That's lovely.
Yes.
Couldn't have gone better, really,
No.
could it?
Then there was and I have mentioned it on the show, but I thought it's worth revisiting under a new kind of lens with the difficult conversation, which was the conversation I had with my neighbour.
Yup.
But it's a good example of how not to do things. And also, I think mutual respect is key to this.
Yeah.
So I went round there as a reminder to people listening. I went round there because I have a very difficult relationship with my neighbour. We don't really speak. They're very hostile and combative, and they basically hate us. And they're doing building work. And the communication is just so broken down. And I saw her pulling into her driveway one day. Normally I see her, she's with her kids, so I'm not going to speak to her when she's with her kids, but she happened to be on her own.
Yeah.
So I just popped my head around the corner and I said, oh, hi. And she said, hi. I said, can I have a word? And I sort of went in with resolution at the top. I said, I really want us to find a way to be civil with one another, to find a way that we can move forward. Obviously things are so difficult. And she hasn't read the steps in this show because we haven't released it.
Has
yet.
she not?
And I don't think she listens to my podcast.
Did you not send her the script?
Something tells me she doesn't listen to my podcast.
I have a feeling she doesn't. I'm quite glad she doesn't, because we have slagged her off for many, many, many months. We even got the therapist in here talking about her.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but firstly, she makes really good content. And secondly, because she pushes me and she triggers me and she's difficult, and I'm learning about myself through this awful woman living next to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, she just basically absolutely annihilated me and my husband. She was so rude about my husband. She was like totally accusatory, totally awful. He's done this and he's done that, and how dare you? And it was very hostile. And there's not a lot of places you can go with that. So I thought, just keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything. Just sip it up. Just don't, because it was the week we were doing letting go of being right.
Yes.
So I could have come back with, but you did this and you did that and you did that. But it wasn't, I knew it wasn't going to be conducive, because all I wanted was resolution.
It wasn't. It was awful. It just got more and more heated, didn't it?
Got more and more heated. And then she basically chucked me off her land. Get off my property.
Oh, not to mention told you that you have many enemies, which made you sound like some sort of Marvel hero. I mean, that was what cracked me up.
Yeah, you found that really funny.
Hilarious.
Well, I didn't find it
No,
so
I know.
funny.
It was very funny.
I didn't find that so funny. She threatened me.
Yeah.
It was really awful. So obviously, I'm not going to get the resolution that I want.
Zero.
Of course I'm not, because she's not. Firstly, we haven't had that agreement.
No.
We haven't done that sort of disclaimer up front that yes, we both want the same thing. And she doesn't have the skill set that I have, and that's fine. I'm not saying mine is better or worse, but we just obviously deal with things very differently. And I walked away from that, having failed to get resolution. And now we don't speak at all. She completely blanks me, which I think I'm quite pleased about, because she's really unpleasant. And I have to live with that discomfort next door me. And it's horrible.
Horrible.
It's horrible. But I can't. I wanted to bring that here because there's no resolution. I will have it any time. We have reached out to them so many times since.
Well, you can't do more than that.
Because if they don't want the resolution, you ain't going to get it.
You can't get it on your own.
You can't get it on
two-way
your
thing.
own.
Yeah.
I think this is a really good point. It's a good place to go into summary.
Okay.
So the thing that didn't work is that you both have to be in the same space. You both have to want the same thing.
Or at least an improvement. Even if you don't want the same thing. Like, I wanted to express how I was feeling and have my thoughts aired and get an apology. And I think they wanted an admission that we were wrong, and I don't know what they wanted. I don't want to put myself in the shoes of what they wanted. It wasn't the same thing, but it was also like, we need to have a constructive conversation. So I think you at least need to have that. Even if you don't want the same outcome, you need to go into it both feeling this will be a constructive conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And if you're both not willing to do that, then
It's
you
not
are
going
not
to work.
It's not going to work.
Yeah. This isn't a place for hurling stones. It's
Yes. But not everybody understands that. Or not everybody wants that. Some people want to hurl stones because they feel they are so entitled or they're so right and that's going to help, and then someone's going to break down and go, you're right, I'm so sorry.
But it's not a respectful conversation if that's going on. So,
and it's not going to happen.
No.
If you're accusing someone, they're never going to turn around and go, absolutely, you are so right, I am so wrong, I'm the arsehole, and please accept my apology. It's just not going to happen when you're going at someone.
No.
So it's wasteful.
Right, so that's what doesn't work. What does work?
I think the point of view of coming in at I feel, not you did, is huge.
Yeah.
I know we haven't highlighted that in our weeks, but I do try and do that a lot with Adam. I feel this way.
Well, no, I did exactly that in the bullet points in the notes I wrote. When that situation happened, it made me feel ...
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that was what I needed to say.
It's vital. And I think obviously the thing that works is both wanting some form of resolution, however that looks.
Yes.
And however long it takes.
Yes.
Being in it. Both wanting to be in relationship. That's the trick.
And I guess even if it doesn't turn out to be a perfect resolution or any resolution, maybe there is some sense of feeling that you have tried.
Yeah.
And
You've done your best. You can't do more than that.
Yeah.
You can't do more than that. So I know that the people that I spoke about at the top of the show, like my inner circle of people, they all want to be in a relationship with me. So having these conversations with them is not difficult because I know that we love each other, respect each other, and we're going to want to find resolution together.
I think in the learning part, there is there's a great relief and a freedom once you've had that conversation. And the worst bit is the holding on to it. You know, what you're holding on to. It's very toxic, that shit.
It is.
Yeah.
You still do a bit of that though.
I do. But the outcome or the resolution of that conversation can make you feel much better than you feel in that moment, you know, when you're holding on to that stuff. So I think it is worth the risk, however uncomfortable and anxiety provoking and difficult it is. It's worth taking the punt because it can't be worse than how you're feeling.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if the relationship is broken down anyway,
The only way is up, basically.
Yeah. And it goes back to putting on your big girl pants.
Put them on, pull them up
As
tight.
Brene Brown says, a moment of discomfort over months of resentment.
Yeah, I mean, I've walked in those shoes and I can tell you, honestly, it is helpful.
Listen, I did it with my friend who who I broke up with, and I
Yeah,
tried to have a conversation with
know.
her, but she didn't want to have it.
No.
So I couldn't go anywhere with that.
No.
And I held on to the discomfort
Yeah.
for years
Yeah.
of all the shit
Yeah.
that was being chucked at me in the relationship.
Yeah.
And so I then put on my big girl pants and tried to have the relationship, but she tried to have the conversation, but she didn't want it. Then the relationship broke down because
Yeah.
there's nowhere to go.
Yeah. So I guess the big question.
Is it coming in the club? Of course it's coming in the club.
It's coming in the club, and I know that people are going to see this title, How to Have a Difficult Conversation, and go, oh, yucky, icky, I don't want to.
All of that. It is all of
And
that.
it is everything, all of those things.
Yeah.
But it's also really important.
Healing. You used the word healing.
It was healing.
It is healing. It is. You know, had that neighbour have been a little bit more receptive to me, we would have had a better relationship now,
Of
having had
course.
that conversation. That's very healing.
Yeah.
Both got to be in it.
To win it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's our show on how to have a difficult conversation. We'll be back on Friday, and
Yes.
Clemmy is going to give the clubbers a challenge, isn't she, on Friday's epilogue
she
show?
is, and come back with some more of her wisdom.
We're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Look after yourselves. Clubbers, if you need to have a difficult conversation, then have a think about it. Listen to the show, write some notes, and look after yourself.
And let us know how it went.
Oh, yes.
Please.
Let us know how it went. We'd love to hear.
Yeah.
If you want to be in touch, hello at theselfcareclub.co.uk, or you can find us on Instagram at selfcareclubpod, and we will be back Friday.
Bye-bye.
Mike Tirico here with some of the 2024 Team USA athletes. What's your message for the team of tomorrow?
To young athletes, never forget why you started doing it in the first place.
You have to pursue something that you're passionate about.
Win, lose, or draw, I'm always going to be the one having a smile on my face.
Finding joy in why you do it keeps you doing it.
Be authentic, be you, and have fun.
Joy is powering Team USA during the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Comcast is proud to be bringing that inspiration home for the team of tomorrow.